Great. Well, welcome everyone. We're thrilled to offer a little bit more information about some of the cool things we have going on here. So let's get started here. My name is Paul Jordan. I'm joined by Drew Fahey, and we're excited to share some of the very cool new features of BlackLight Release 1, which came out last week. Put a lot of effort into this, and we've got some things that we've heard from customers we improved, but also some internal innovation that we want to share with you. We're also going to take the opportunity to talk about MacQuisition. This is a product that's been out for a number of years, but as many of you know, and some of you have already, we redefined this product completely, reconstructed it really. It remains in name only, but we added some very unique triage-like components and live options to what was once more of a static boot imaging solution. So let's talk about BlackLight to start here. Some of the great new features we focus on are really trying to make it more flexible, innovative, and efficient. To start with, we added LO1 image support and targeted file support, folder support, excuse me. We recognize that clients use a number of different image formats, whether proprietary or open standards in the industry, and so we continue to push the format availability for clients, regardless of what solutions they're using or what open solutions they're using to import their data. Another thing we worked on was file filtering. The filtering mechanism in BlackLight is something that we feel really distinguishes it from other products in the industry. Again, the challenge is too much data, too little time, and so we really focus on a filtering solution that's easy to use, intuitive, and most of all, fast and efficient. And so we've added some new filtering features specifically with regard to some of the metadata that Drew's going to show you in a bit here to more quickly sort by either GPS data, device type, things of that nature that we haven't had included in the filter in the past. We added some scale to our tagging. Some of you have been involved in some very large projects and tagged tens of thousands of image files, for example, and so we added some robust scale to that, which we hope you'll be happy with. We also focused on adding some features around data export. We recognize that a lot of law enforcement clients in particular use a reporting function. With the R4 release last year, we really improved that to make it as open as possible. But we realized that a lot of clients are using BlackLight to parse and analyze the data, but they don't necessarily want to put it in a report. They may take it out to as simple as an Excel spreadsheet. They may use a number of other solutions. They may want the data to be part of a broader investigation using different collaborative tools. And so we focused on export availability and options here to make that more seamless. We also worked on hashing. So obviously this is something we haven't had that we've been happy with in the past, and so we added significant new hashing features with this release that Drew's going to talk to you and explain in a little more detail. All right, a few words on MacQuisition, and then we'll go into the products in particular. Drew's going to pull up here the MacQ demo, but I just want to talk to you a couple things that we're doing. So as I mentioned earlier, we really redefined the product, and the things that we brought to bear were live imaging. So MacQuisition retains the boot capabilities. It boots nearly 200 existing Macs in the field. But it also has a live imaging component. So now if you come across a Mac, and especially to avoid encryption, it's up and running, you can plug in MacQuisition and go to town on creating an image. Along with the imaging improvements, we included a RAM image capture component. So another area that we know customers have been asking for, and we're excited to bring this to you. And lastly, we included pretty interesting targeted file, folder, and volume acquisition components. This may be targeted a little bit more towards the corporate sector community discovery, but it's something we've been using internally as a tool for a number of years, and we included a lot of these features in the latest release of MacQuisition so that you have too much data, you don't want to take an image. It gives you a lot of flexibility to sort by different mechanisms to take only the data that you want to instill a forensically sound manner. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Drew. And again, if you have questions, please type them in and we'll get to them as soon as possible. Drew?
Thanks, Paul. Welcome, everybody. Glad to be back, and we're excited to show you actually not just one product today, but two. The first one we're going to show you is the one that Paul just finished talking about, which is our new MacQuisition, which, as Paul stated, is basically only the same in name only. So what you should see on your screen right now is the brand new MacQuisition interface. And this interface is identical whether you're booted into MacQuisition, which is the OS 10 version, or whether you're running it live. And that's one of the newest features of this version of MacQuisition, is that you can now run it on any live OS 10 based system. Simply plug in the dongle and you can bring up this interface. So what you're looking at is the simple case details where, pretty much like any forensics product, you can enter your investigative information, set the system time and whatnot. But really what the important part is these two buttons up at the very top of the screen, where you have the data collection and the imaging area. So we're gonna show you the data collection first. So as we switch the screen, you'll notice that you have this data collection area, and it's basically broken up into 4 different areas. The first area is the system data, and this is basically collecting the information from the OS 10 system itself. So you can get the kernel information, you can get the network information. Really quickly, we'll just show you one where you can actually see the network statistics. I'll just click on that, and in the screen it instantly shows you the network connectivity statistics from this particular system. And that's going to be true for all of these different items. And you can see we roughly calculate the size of those items the minute you click on it. So if I wanted to see the running processes, you'll notice that it figures out what the running processes are and it gives you the exact size. So that's the system data. Moving down, as you scroll down, we have the user files. And what we do is we break these out based upon users that are determined from the running system. So in this case, I'm running MacQuisition from the key. So basically you can see that there are users on those two various boot areas. We have 10.6.7 and 10.5.8. I'm not interested in those. But what I'm interested in is a system here, which is basically this MacBook Pro, and there's 4 users on there. We have the root user, my user, which I actually have 2 of them, and then a black bag user. Below that are all the different files that we've predetermined that we want to collect. And to collect those, you simply just keep those check boxes checked, choose what you want, and it will collect those files. So if I didn't want to get the address book for all 4 of these users, I just turn it off. If I only want the address book for one particular user, in this case, let's just use the Drew account, now it will only collect these files from the user Drew. So you can check these. You can see actually there's quite a bit of information here. In fact, if I wanted to collect all of the information that's checked, I would need approximately 30 gigs worth of storage space in order to collect all of these files. If I click on one of these, let's say the Internet Firefox items, you can see all of the specific files that will be collected from this Firefox collection. Same thing if I wanted to click on the mobile sync. You can actually see all of the iOS mobile sync items that would specifically be collected. Moving on down, we have the system files. Now the system files are specific to OS 10 systems, and you can see that there are 3 OS 10 systems, 2 of which are MacQuisition. The other one is being the system I'm running on, and you can see the specific files very specifically, like the iOS lockdown files or the escrow files that exist. I would want to copy those out. If there happens to be a sleep image, which in case there is one here, which is 16 gigs in size, and any of the other stuff, like if I wanted to see the deleted users or the active users, I can get all that information. And the fourth and final part are, if there are files that you want to collect that we haven't specifically highlighted in the files area, you can simply check the select files, which will bring up a dialog box that allows you to specifically choose the files that you're interested in. Or you can simply drag and drop files through the Finder onto the window, and it will add those files. So as you can see, I just moved a test folder that contains 267 megs worth of data and just dropped it on there, and I am going to collect all of those files now. All I need to do is set my destination. In this case, I'll just show you, I'm just going to set it to MQ data. And once I do that, my destination is now set. I click on start, and it will collect everything that's checked in this box over to this destination area. So the second area is basically in the imaging device, where we have our own kernel extension for imaging RAM. So you can see I have 16 gigs of RAM on my system. If I wanted to image that, I simply collect it, choose the format, the destination is already set for me, I click image device, and within about 2 minutes I will have collected a raw dump, in this case it's raw because that's the format I chose, of my RAM. I can also choose to do different formats, which is new for this version. Before we had RAW and we had DMG. Well, we've added EO1 support because that seems to be becoming the really kind of the baseline that everybody's using for imaging, predominantly because of the compression capability. So we added EO1 capability. So I can simply do EO1 and I can make a RAM dump of my RAM. Excuse me. The other thing is before MacQuisition was set for specifically imaging physical devices, and we've made that change where now you can choose the physical. Or if you don't want that, if you want to choose a logical, so if you're in a live environment and happens to be running, say, Lion with FileVault 2 enabled, you can simply choose the unencrypted slice and select that, choose your options, set your destination, click image, and that's it. You're going to get your forensic image. So that's what we're going to show. That's what we wanted to show you today for MacQuisition. Pretty intuitive, pretty simple. And we have a lot of things that we're going to be adding to this in the future. So if you have any questions on MacQuisition, go ahead and ask them, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation. And hopefully you guys like it as much as we do. So I'm going to switch modes here, and I'm actually going to bring up BlackLight. And we're going to talk about all of the new features for BlackLight. So basically we're going to open up our case here. And you'll see in the window, hopefully the latency is not too bad for everyone. But as the window opens, it's our typical case window, which has existed through all versions of BlackLight. And I've already have created a couple of items in here that we're going to use for this example. So you can see I have an iPad, an iPhone. Actually, I have 2 iPhones and an iPad. This iPad happens to be one of the new iPads. So many people refer to this iPad 3. This is a 3rd generation iPad. BlackLight does support basically all versions of all iOS products, physical and logical, depending on how you make the image. And we can bring those in. In this case, this is a logical acquisition of the iPad. And so we have that. Now, one of the things that Paul highlighted was the ability, as you all know who have used BlackLight, we have the ability to bring in various images. So we have to, if we want to do a logical, you could do the attached device or a USB attached iOS device. We can bring in any of the images, whether it's an EO1 image, DMG, all of that stuff's the same. But you notice we've added a new feature, adding folders and LO1 images. So I have on my desktop, you can see here, I have an LO1 image and a folder. As with what I showed you with MacQuisition, we can simply drag and drop the LO1 in. The LO1 will be added. I can choose what options for pre-processing I want to do. I'll just turn this off for speed's sake. And you notice that the LO1 is added. And so you can see here in the component pane, we have the sample LO1 as well as the folder that contains all of the files in that LO1. And I can do the same thing by doing add and choosing disk image and choosing the LO1. It'll bring it in the exact same way. And likewise, if you have just a folder or an individual files that you want to bring in, you bring it into a folder component. So take this folder, just add it. The same pre-processing option window through the evidence selection will appear. And we can simply add all of these files. And so you notice that it will come in, it starts processing, doing its options, and we have our test folder of all of our test images. So 2 new options make it real simple. One of the beauties of bringing in a folder is if you have, currently if you have an iOS backup folder, bring in that iOS backup folder, it'll pre-parse it automatically and recognize that it's an actual iOS device. And so you no longer have to actually make that DMG. So pretty nice, makes it very, very efficient. So what I really wanted to show you is some of the new things that we've done with the file filtering, which actually make it even more powerful than it was before. So BlackLight's always been great at being able to parse the data from OS X systems and show you that. And what we're trying to do is basically whittle down that proverbial needle in the haystack. And so when you actually go into the file filter, you had a whole bunch of options there which were really good for being able to locate files. And the thing about the file filter is you could continue to add filter upon filter, and it made it very powerful. But one of the things that we really did to improve this was take all of the additional information about the file, so all of the metadata, and actually load that into the database. And through a couple of really elegant SQL commands, we're now able to actually give you filtering based upon all of the metadata. So to give you a very simple example of how powerful this can be, I'm just going to choose the iPad, and I'm going to open up my filter, and I'm going to say, I want to see all of the data that happens to exist on this device that contains geolocation data or GPS information. So if I choose the metadata field, and I just say contains, and we're going to type in GPS, we're just going to keep this very, very simple, and I click on filter, it goes through my filter, and you see very quickly, now this is a 32 gig iPad, there's not a whole lot of data on it, but you can see instantly we have 14 files that have GPS data. Now how do I know they have GPS data? Well, let's click on a few of them. So when I click on it, if you want to see the picture, I click on native as always, and you can actually see it's an office location. If I scroll down into all of the metadata fields, you'll notice at the very bottom we actually do have GPS coordinate data. So every single one of these files that got returned has GPS data. Now some of the more elegant features are anything that's in these views you can search on. So if I wanted to say show me all of the pictures that were taken with an Apple device, I could search on the metadata value which contains the keyword Apple. Click on filter, and you'll notice now I have 631 files, that have the keyword Apple in it. Now some of these may not necessarily be ones that were taken with an Apple iPhone or an iPad. As an example, if I click on one of these icons here, you'll notice that more than likely it's probably copyrighted or set or created by Apple. In this case, it actually happens to be copyrighted by Apple Computer. So the metadata stuff can become very powerful, and you can compound these filters by adding more filters. So if you wanted to get rid of duplicate files, and which I'm going to show you in a little bit, you can do that. But it becomes very, very quick and easy in order to isolate specific information that you're looking for. As another example, let's say I wanted to show me all pictures that were taken with a Nikon camera. I just type in Nikon, and this can be anything really, and there's 2 pictures that were taken with a Nikon camera. You scroll down, you can actually see that where it was created within the TIFF, the device make and model happened to be made with a Nikon D200 camera. So it becomes very easy to actually find this stuff, very powerful. The other thing about filters that we've done is we've added a bunch of saved filters. So when you create a new case now, you'll notice that your saved filters will become populated with more than the original 3 that we had. So we now can actually get and instantly show you the plist information, which new investigators to OS 10 are always wanting to find, but they really don't know the location to delve into to grab. So you can get all of the OS information about the software, the user accounts, network information, log files, even instant messaging. Simply click on that, and you click on filter. You can see the filters we've already pre-populated for you, and it will find all that information. So the saved filters and filters, we've spent quite a bit of time working on that, and it comes very, very well. So the second thing that we're going to talk about is the new feature we did with hashing. Now hashing's always been in BlackLight, both SHA-1, SHA-256, as well as the default of MD5. And you can always see the hashes of files, assuming you made the hash. So an example here that I've just highlighted, this happens to be the data hash or an MD5 hash of this particular image. And we always had the built-in hashes for the OS 10 system files, as well as some of the NSRL files. Well, we kind of turned that and said we want to increase the capability of that. So rather than just negative hashing, we also want to have positive hashing. And so what we did is we added a whole bunch of new hash sets. And when we go into the window to actually manage these hash sets, you will see that by default we've included the HashKeeper hash sets now, the updated known OS 10 system hash sets. So we have from OS 10.00 all the way up to 10.7.3. And we've also included the updated NSRL hash sets. Now this is only a subset, so we only include the hash sets that NIST does for Apple-based products. And at some point in the near future, we'll allow you to import your own hash sets. But for now, these are BlackLight hash sets. You can see I have one up here called BlackLight hash set. And I'm going to show you how this works right now. I'm going to remove this hash set. So let's say I have this as my case, and I get this iPad and these 2 iPhones, and I'm investigating it, but it comes to my attention that, say, another investigator, either in a different agency or in a different department, has got some other devices, and we want to compare and contrast to see what similarities happen to be between these devices. So I can create my own hash set, and I can pass that hash set now between investigators. So if I click on iPad at the root level here, so you'll see in the browser view, what I've done is I've just highlighted the top level of the file system, and I'm going to right click on this, do a contextual menu, bring up and say export the hash set. Now when I do that, it's going to automatically default the name to BlackLight hash set, and you can name it whatever you want, and it will save it into the hash set folder. When I save this, you'll notice that it basically, a tag item opens up on file exports. I click on it and you can see that basically my progress is being made. So what this is doing is creating a BlackLight hash set of every single file from the selected device, which in this case was the iPad. I can then take this hash set and I can send it to other investigators, and they can like run that hash set and they can see what files match between different cases. So when it's done, if I come back to here and I go to the file filter, I'd actually have to run the hash set first before I do this. If I click on the known files within the device status, I've already run this, and that's why it says complete. But if you had not run that particular hash set before, you would have this checkbox. You could check on the checkbox, click OK, and it will then compare all of the files that are in it. So since I've already run it, if I come to the file filter, I'm just going to close these out, and I can show you how we do both negative and positive hashing now. So I can actually choose the hash set item, and I can say, are there files in or not in a specific hash set? So I say what files are not in the hash set, say the one I just made, the BlackLight hash set, and I click on filter, you'll notice I'll have several files that are not in this hash set. Now if you look closely, you'll notice of these 7,000 some odd files, all of them, if I were to scroll down, are going to show you 0 bytes. So there's no point in hashing a 0 byte file. They're all going to have the same hash value. I can add a second filter, which we've added, which is great for an e-discovery role, is I can suppress all of the duplicate files. And you'll notice when I do that, there are basically 0 files. So what I can now do is I can open up this hash set window. I can find where this exists in the file system, which is in the documentation. I can give this hash set to my other investigators. They can simply add it by dragging and dropping it into this window, or clicking on the plus sign to add it. And then they can do their own hash set analysis as well. One of the other filters we have is if you have a partial hash, or you want to try and match a partial hash, you can actually change the filter to file hash and contains, and you can say show me all the file hashes that have, say, the keyword or the partial hash of 5AF. Get rid of that, and this is going to match quite a bit because 5AF could be in a whole bunch of things. So that's what we've done with the filtering. We're going to be adding a lot more down the road, but that's become very, very powerful for this release, and we're pretty happy with it. So that said, the final thing we're going to show you is some of the data exportation items that we've done. So for that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this iPhone, and a lot of people have expressed they like the views, but they don't necessarily want to report on them because, like Paul said, they just want to basically get the data out, give it to another investigator who's then will go through it all. And they just will probably load it up into an Excel an Excel spreadsheet, throw it into a database, do whatever they need to do. So within every single view in BlackLight now, everything that you see, we kind of consider a list view. So this is basically a list with the attributes pane. This view here, so like for instance this SMS view, while we have both the list and the conversation view, which are great, we never really had a way to export that data in a clean way for pure importation as a CSV or a tab separated value. Well, now we do. So if I'm in this list view, I can basically select all of the items, and I just happen to be showing you the SMS, but it will apply for any view in BlackLight. And I can go to the action, I can do a contextual menu and do the same thing, and I do export rows. And how do I want to export it? As a CSV or a tab delimited? So in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and choose a CSV. And it automatically, just like our tags, is content aware. It knows that you're basically taking information, in this case, I'm in the SMS view, so it's going to save it as data from an SMS message. I'll just save it to a desktop. And so you can see on my desktop, it automatically creates this file. If I were to open it up with, say, TextMate as an example, you can see very simply We have the column headings that we had, and then all of the data. So if I close this out, I can bring this right into Excel, and there's our data in Excel. And you can bring this into a SQLite database or any other database or spreadsheet format that you want. And again, this can happen through basically any of the different views. So those are the highlights we're going to touch. There was a whole bunch of other new smaller features and a lot of other fixes and updates here and there. But the full change log is obviously within the system, and then we have the user guide, which has been updated and addresses all these as well. So we're gonna turn it off. I'm going to turn it back to the presentation. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Drew.